Have you ever asked yourself, why do I keep attracting narcissists? It's a valid question and an important one, but if you get the wrong answer to that question, you can stay stuck in this pattern forever. And today, I want to make sure you get the right answer. So if you do keep ending up with narcissists, I want you to know it's not because you're broken or weak. It's because narcissists are exploiting something about you in a very specific way. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what they're doing and how to prevent it. So if you're ready to stop repeating this cycle and start creating genuinely healthy relationships. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Restoring Resilience. I'm Chelsey Brooke Cole, and in this episode, we're exploring why you keep ending up with narcissists in your life and how you can change that pattern for good. We'll talk about the most common personality traits among survivors, how narcissists exploit these personality traits, and most importantly, how to prevent yourself from getting into these relationships, to protect yourself from any narcissistic relationships you are in, and even start repelling narcissists in your life. Because relationship patterns can and do change. I'm living proof of that because I've had more than one narcissistic relationship, and I'm now in a safe, healthy marriage and only keep healthy people in my life. And that only happened because of the internal work that I did. So today I'm going to show you how to do that, because when you shift internally, your relationships can begin to shift too. So let's start with something that might surprise you. If you've ever asked this question, why do I attract narcissists? You're actually focused on the wrong question, because the real question isn't about who gets in these kinds of relationships, because sometimes you're simply born into these relationships, aka narcissists are in your family. You had nothing to do with choosing them, that just happened. Plus, narcissists will exploit anyone. So no one is going to be 100% immune from ever interacting with narcissists. The real question you need to be asking is about who stays in the relationship, because there are definitely things you can learn about yourself that helps you just understand why and how you stay and get stuck. And before I go any further, I want to be very clear that the main reason you stay stuck in this relationship is because you're being abused. I will never put the blame on the survivors for why they stay in these relationships, when the reality is you stay because you're being exploited. You stay because you're being lied to and were from the beginning. You're being manipulated. You're being deceived. And if you really knew who the narcissist was and that they were intentionally manipulating you from the beginning, you would have made a different choice. So it's not fair for you to take the blame here when you've been making decisions about this relationship without all the information. And this is actually something so sinister, it's been coined betrayal violence, which is when someone is systematically and consistently betraying you for their own gain. And we know narcissists certainly do this. They gaslight you, aka they make you doubt yourself to the point that you don't even trust your own perceptions. You don't even trust your own eyes, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. They use a type of gaslighting called DARVO, which stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender role. These are the conversations you walk away from wondering, how in the world did we get here? And you feel like you did something wrong, and you end up apologizing, even though you're the one who was trying to make the repair in the relationship because of something the narcissist did. Many narcissists are also using components of coercive control. That means they're threatening, intimidating, humiliating you to instill fear, to punish and control you. So, by no means is a narcissistic relationship an equally balanced partnership where just both people are equally responsible for the problems in the relationship. So, anything that we talk about in the rest of this episode has to be understood first in that context. Now, what we do know is that some people seem to repel narcissists. Not only do they typically avoid getting into narcissistic relationships, but they navigate any narcissistic relationships they do have in a very specific way. And these narcissist repellent people tend to have very strong boundaries. They trust themselves and their perception and their intuitions. They're not easily gaslighted. And so when narcissists start trying to use these manipulative tactics, these kind of people will disengage, they'll walk away. Essentially, they'll communicate to the narcissist they're going to be a very difficult person to manipulate and to take advantage of. And narcissists don't like that. Honestly, they want someone they can mold with little to minimal effort. They're looking for someone who will stay engaged in this dynamic with them, someone who will give despite how much they're taking, someone who's going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're going to assume that the narcissist means well, keep working to repair things despite difficulties, despite betrayals. And that's where personality traits and choices come into play. And there's one personality trait that research shows does consistently come up among narcissistic abuse survivors, and that trait is agreeableness. Now, you might hear that term, and it's often misunderstood because it's much more than simply being a nice or pleasant person. It's more than just being an agreeable person. Agreeableness is actually made up of several characteristics, and I'm going to break these down. But it's modesty, morality, altruism, sympathy, trust, and cooperation. And so let's go ahead and break those down. As I'm describing them, I want you to be thinking about if you resonate with these, if you think that these kinds of traits and behaviors and general outlook of the world and other people in relationships, if this fits with the kind of person that you are. So modesty means you're not somebody who feels the need to brag, to prove that you're better than others. You're more likely, to be very humble, and you don't want to make other people feel bad by bragging about some accomplishment. If anything, you're more likely to downplay what you've done, especially if you know that somebody else is going through a hard time. Morality means you value honesty and sincerity. So manipulation doesn't cross your mind as a way to handle relationships. When you want to address a situation with somebody or have a conversation, you want to have a frank, open, genuine, honest conversation. You don't think of approaching it in a manipulative way, like how can I, get one over on them or something like that. Altruism means helping others genuinely feels fulfilling to you. It's not something that, you feel like is a burden, is a heaviness. You genuinely enjoy being helpful to other people. Sympathy means you're deeply compassionate. When somebody else is hurting, you feel it. When somebody else is crying, you might start crying. Even somebody on TV or somebody that you don't know that well, it's just you care about other people. You have a kind heart. Trust means you tend to believe that most people, generally, are fair and honest and have good intentions. Now, I know this one in particular can start to change after you've experienced narcissistic abuse, but consider how you likely started the relationship. You likely started assuming that they meant well, assuming that they weren't intentionally trying to manipulate you. And maybe if you're still in this relationship, you struggle thinking, this person's probably just stressed. They're probably just had a bad childhood. You still have that part of you that's assuming the narcissist has good intentions, that they don't want chaos, that they don't want a relationship like this. They just don't know how to express themselves. And then cooperation means you're willing to compromise and oftentimes even set aside your own needs to maintain harmony in a relationship. So in a workplace, in a community setting, in a relationship, you're the person to say what's going to be the best for the group here, what's going to be best for this relationship, and you're willing to set aside your own needs to make sure that there's harmony in the group. So if you're listening to that and thinking, yeah, that's me, I want you to know, first of all, that those are beautiful traits and they are not a weakness. But it's important that you recognize that is your foundation so you can understand how narcissists operate differently because they are not agreeable. And toward the end of the episode, I'm also going to show you how to set boundaries that still feel authentic to your agreeable nature and what you need to know about boundary setting as an agreeable person. So think about everything I just explained, how agreeable people are modest and authentic, compassionate, sympathetic. These things make up the foundation not only for how you just operate in the world, but oftentimes how you assume others do too. As an agreeable person, it's natural for you to see the best in others, to assume that other people mean well, to believe that most people have good intentions and they're not purposely trying to be difficult. So this is where you're coming from. When you meet or are dealing with a narcissist, you often put on your agreeable glasses and you see the narcissist from that perspective. Here's the problem with that. Narcissists are not agreeable. They are disagreeable. They are fundamentally opposite to you. All the assumptions that you make as an agreeable person, that other people mean well, that you don't need to be manipulative in relationships, narcissists are the opposite of all of those things. So where you tend to trust others, narcissists assume people are selfish and manipulative and devious and out to get them. Where you value honesty and sincerity in relationships, narcissists believe deception is necessary in relationships as they're dealing with other people. Where you find genuine fulfillment in helping others, narcissists view helping others as self-sacrifice, as a burden, as an inconvenience. Where you value harmony, you just want everybody to get along, you hate chaos, you hate conflict. Narcissists are fine with conflict if it gets them what they want. They are more likely to bully and intimidate others to get their way. Narcissists are not modest. They do not mind appearing superior or arrogant. They're not greatly affected by human suffering. This is why you'll see narcissists be able to do things like see you crying and roll over and go to sleep. No problem. So, what happens when an agreeable person meets a disagreeable narcissist? Well, you, as an agreeable person who values honesty, who assumes the best in people, will try to take that filter to understand a narcissist's behavior. Not because the narcissist actually does value honesty and is being authentic, but because that's who you are. And I want you to know that you can't put your agreeable glasses on to understand a narcissist because it will never make sense, and this will keep you stuck. You can never make sense of a narcissist's behavior from your own framework because narcissists are not motivated by the same things that you are. You are motivated by cooperation. You want people to get along. You want harmony. You want to have authentic and meaningful relationships. You value loyalty. Narcissists are motivated by selfishness. What can I get? What's this doing for me? Power, control, dominance. So that means narcissists try to exploit the very qualities that make you kind and compassionate. They try to take advantage of your empathy. They will play the victim to get you to feel sorry for them. They'll tell these heartbreaking stories about how everyone has betrayed them, everyone's misunderstood them, how everybody in life in general has treated them unfairly. And because you're a compassionate person, because you're an agreeable person, you hear that and your heart hurts for that, and you want to help. So you give without expecting anything in return because giving is in your nature. That is natural for you to do. And you usually become quite invested in this person or in this relationship before you realize that you're the only one who actually has pure intentions for this relationship. Meanwhile, the narcissist is also manipulating your desire for harmony because you want peace in the relationship. But what narcissists will do is create conflict and then blame you for that tension or conflict. And because you hate conflict, I mean, you're going to want things to be better far before the narcissist does. You start trying harder to fix things and then usually blame yourself in the process when it doesn't get better. Narcissists will also exploit your trust and your loyalty. You want to see the best in people, so you give second, third, fourth chances. The narcissist will push your boundaries and ignore your needs. And because cooperating feels natural to you to, invest in what that other person wants, to figure out what's going to make them happy, how you can make this relationship better, that's a natural thing and that's a beautiful quality. But what narcissists will do is they exploit that. So you find yourself compromising more and more and more because the narcissist is rigid and refuses to compromise and refuses to shift. So over time you realize, I'm the only one who's going to be even willing to bend here, even willing to try to make this work. And you keep doing this until the relationship feels completely unbalanced and you've lost yourself entirely. Now, here's the part that really matters because it's very easy at a point like this to think, okay, obviously I need to stop being an agreeable person. I need to cut off this empathy, not care so much about people because that's what keeps hurting me. And although understandable, that is the last thing I want you to walk away from this episode with. Because if you do that, the narcissist really does win. And they are not worth you giving up the best parts of you. They do not deserve to take your beautiful, kind qualities away from you. Your empathy and your cooperation, your harmony is not the problem. In fact, we need more agreeable people in the world. So here's what I would suggest instead. You need to add boundaries and self-trust to your agreeable traits, to your kindness, to your empathy. That's the problem, is that we leave that out. And here's how you start doing that. 1, don't put on your agreeable glasses to understand narcissists. Look at them through that disagreeable lens. Remember all the things we talked about, how narcissists are the opposite of who you are. They assume people are out to get them. They do not assume the best. They're more likely to intimidate and bully to get their way. They are not compromising. You need to see narcissists through that lens, and that's not you being cynical or negative. You're being realistic. That is how narcissists view the world. I understand that's so different from how you view it that it feels like you're being mean or cynical or negative in some way to assume that of them, but that is how narcissists are. They are fundamentally disagreeable. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you're dealing with somebody who is consistently high conflict, antagonistic, rigid in their thinking, difficult, then assuming that they mean well and they have good intentions is going to keep you in that insanity. So I encourage you to see things as they are, not as you hoped they could be. 2, look at the consequences of not setting boundaries. So I want you to pause for just a moment and think, what have I sacrificed to keep the peace? Time with my kids, the pursuit of a meaningful goal, enjoyment of my hobbies. How about your basic sense of self, your sense of self-worth? And narcissists don't deserve your precious time and energy, which is finite for all of us, and that they keep getting if you don't make some of these changes and set these boundaries. And once time and energy is given, you can't get it back. And so my encouragement is don't give the best of you to people who don't even appreciate it, to people who are exploiting it anyways. 3rd, start advocating for yourself in writing, and this is part of the boundary setting. I want you to start by journaling your true thoughts, feelings, intentions. Now, of course, make sure this is done in a private space. Only do this if you feel like you can do it in a way that's safe to you. But all those thoughts and feelings that you usually push down, that you usually think to yourself, what's the point in saying it anyways? They're not going to care. I want you to start writing those out. Not because you're ever necessarily going to even say them to the narcissist, because you're right, they likely will not care, and they will just use that as more ammunition against you. I want you to write it out, your thoughts, your feelings, your needs, because you deserve to be heard. And you are loving yourself enough to give yourself a space to say what you want to say, what you need to say without a filter and without concern about how somebody else will feel about it. I know sometimes when you're starting this process that even saying how you really feel to people around you, you hesitate even with that. A lot of times we might filter ourselves because we're like, oh, how are they going to take this? Or I don't want to burden them with this. I don't want them to think badly of this person. So you still don't even say it to your friends and the people close to you. But what that means is you never get to truly come to terms with how you think and feel. That's why a lot of times writing things down, journaling can be a great place to start, because you need to do it in a way that you don't have that other filter or concern about how it's going to affect somebody else, how somebody else might respond to it. You need to love yourself enough and start showing yourself the decency of allowing yourself the space to put in writing what you really think and feel. And 4, I want you to affirm what's true about you. And here's what I mean by that. Some of the skills you have to develop to deal with narcissists is going to feel unnatural to you because of your agreeable nature, because you're an agreeable person. So, for example, let's say that you're co-parenting with a narcissist and they want to make a slight change in the parenting time schedule, and it really wouldn't be that big a deal for you. It just so happens that you're available at that time, so accommodating that, being flexible wouldn't really be a big deal. And honestly, it feels natural for you to be like, sure, yeah, that's fine. But you know that if you give a narcissist an inch, they'll take a mile. So you have to be more inflexible, stick with the parenting plan schedule as it is, rather than being accommodating, which would feel more natural for you. So this setting really firm boundaries, not trying to explain yourself, not trying to smooth things over, is going to feel really unnatural, maybe even mean, maybe even wrong. But it's not because you're doing something bad. It's because you're an agreeable person whose most natural mode is to create harmony and connection. And that's why I wanted you to know and see what being an agreeable person really means. Because a lot of times, agreeable people take those things for granted. They're like, everybody is assuming the best. Everybody's just doing the best that they can. Nobody is intentionally being cruel. And that's just not the case. And so it's really important that you understand why some of these things are going to feel like you're going against the grain of who you are, because you are. Your mode is to be harmonious and to make adjustments for other people in relationships. So doing things like sticking with the plans that you set, even if you could change them, or just not agreeing with the narcissist, like just holding an opinion that's different than them, those things are going to feel like you're being difficult. And of course the narcissist is going to tell you you're being difficult, you're being controlling, you're being selfish. Why are you treating me this way? Why have you changed? But you're not doing anything wrong. You're not being difficult. You're not being controlling. You're actually finally living in reality. You're recognizing the kind of person you're dealing with. You're recognizing that you're dealing with a disagreeable person, not an agreeable person, and you're adjusting your behavior accordingly. And I want you to think about this too. If this really was in your control, if this really was your fault, like the narcissist will tell you that it is, these issues fundamentally would not exist in your relationship. They would have already been solved because you are capable of being cooperative and flexible and reasonable and empathetic. You're dealing with someone who can't and won't. That's why you have to set such firm boundaries and change the way that you interact with them. And understanding all of this is very important because if you don't know why, like I said, if you don't know why you're setting boundaries, why you're behaving differently with a narcissist, you're much more likely to believe the narcissist narrative. You might start thinking, maybe I am being kind of difficult. I mean, I did change. Maybe I'm being unforgiving. Maybe I am part of the problem. Maybe they have a point here. But when you understand how narcissists operate, you can recognize that what feels uncomfortable for you is actually the healthiest response possible because of the person that you're dealing with. So as we wrap up here today, here are the big ideas I want you to remember. First, attracting narcissists isn't about something being wrong with you. Most survivors have the personality trait of agreeableness, which includes empathy and compassion and trust and cooperation. Second, narcissists exploit those traits through manipulation and victimhood, boundary violations, and these psychological tactics like gaslighting and Darvo. And third, protecting yourself does not mean losing your kindness. It means adding boundaries, self-trust, and clarity about the cost of abandoning yourself. And when you start doing that internal work, your relationships begin to change too. Not because the other person is doing something different. Don't expect the narcissist to somehow become more agreeable. But your relationships can change because you are becoming a different person and are therefore changing the dynamics in your current and future relationships. You start recognizing red flags sooner, you trust your intuition more, and over time, narcissists will actually become less interested in you because you're no longer someone in their mind that they can easily control. If today's episode resonated with you and you want to go deeper into this work, I have 3 resources to share with you. The first is if you feel like you need more help to just understand how narcissists think and not buy into their manipulations, then I encourage you to check out my free masterclass, The Narcissist Playbook, where I break down the 3 core lies narcissists use to keep you stuck in guilt, self-doubt, and exhaustion, and exactly how to see through them and get your next steps. Second, if you want to truly understand the patterns of narcissistic abuse and really focus on rebuilding your sense of identity and self-trust, I invite you to check out my best-selling book, If Only I'd Known. And then third, if you're tired of feeling isolated and misunderstood and you just feel like you need real tools, not just more education, then I encourage you to check out my comprehensive healing program, Rewired for Resilience, where you gain not only clarity about what's keeping you stuck, but access to tools that are going to help you navigate these relationships. You get direct daily access to me and my help, along with 2 times weekly support groups, plus an active community of survivors who get exactly what you're going through, along with a whole lot more of resources. And you can find access to all those links in the show notes. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Restoring Resilience. And until next time, remember that no matter where you are in your healing journey, resilience can be restored. And we will keep building it together. So I'll see you in the next episode.